Okay. Okay. Gotta get my drawing glove on. One watching right now, really? Oh, I guess that might be just me. Huh. I have to pick somewhere to start. I'm actually pretty proud of this because I made a 3D model in Blender and brought it into Clip Studio Paint. So yeah, you can see the little like model underneath. It's pretty cool. I'm proud of it, at least. Sorry, I'm a little sick, so... Or I at least have a cough. It's part of why I'm still on page 39 of this thing instead of... It's 42 pages in total, so... I meant to be finished by March 31st, but I got sick for the past couple weeks, so I've been just kind of taking it easy. Working on some animations for a game that my friend's making. I've been posting those on Twitter. I think that's come out pretty nicely, honestly. It's gonna look better when the skeletons are less sketchy and pencily, though. I sometimes have to wonder about, like, when is it a good idea to invest the time to make something? Like, and I had an idea for something just now that might not be too much trouble, but I'm not sure exactly how much of an investment of time it would be, and I don't want to just like waste a bunch of time on something that I don't think is that great an idea, you know? I just had to sort of reinstall all the programs on my computer because of various reasons, Windows Update, you know, not working, stuff like that. Boy, I sound a lot sicker than I am, but I ended up reinstalling my Open Broadcasting software as part of why I'm streaming, is because it's like, oh right, I forgot about that. But I took some test footage of me playing a video game and I've been wanting to put together some videos like for a while now. So I thought, what if I just took this footage of me playing and I just did like a silly, dumb, like improvised voiceover and then cut it together. I'm thinking about trying to learn to use the Blender editing tools. I've been using it. That's what I used to make this 3D model. So I'm a little more familiar with it now than I was before. 2.8 is like actually a program that a human might be able to use, which is novel for Blender, but I certainly appreciate that it's moving that direction. But it's like, well, do I want to do that though? It seems like kind of low effort, and it seems like something that I could do quickly and that would teach me something that I want to know how to do. So I think maybe I will just do it, but I think it may be one of those things where it's like, if I think about it for too long, I'll end up chickening out, you know, because it's like, oh, that's not the best idea. Sometimes it's so important to just like follow like your gut instinct and just, you know, make what you want to make instead of thinking like, oh, is this gonna be good? So like, it doesn't have to be good, it just needs to get done. It's more important. I'm only saying all this because like I don't follow that advice very well. It's advice to me, you know. I think a lot of times when people are giving advice, it's really for themselves. Sometimes it's genuinely for other people and it's something you're good at, but sometimes it's just like, oh, I know I'm bad at this thing, so assuming that everyone's like me, which is easy to do, you tend to give advice that you would give yourself. Boy, I'm gonna have to cover a lot of this up with this water. I don't know why I decided to do this setting where there's caves in water, because I don't know how to draw caves in water. I mean, like, when you get to a certain point, like, you sort of learn enough to be able to draw most anything. Like, especially as you know, look at reference and stuff. It's important. But it's not something that I go, oh, you know what I really want to draw? Caves, which you kind of can't exactly use perspective to draw, and water, which is just very, very difficult. I don't know, maybe some people think it's easy. I don't think so. Water's just so disorganized, you know. It has like a pattern to it, but like I don't really understand it. I just try to make it sort of look right. That's all I can really do. Oh, I heart you, water. I feel like I've gotten better since starting this episode. Like, what is it, like 3 years ago now? Gosh, this was a hard one for me. I wish I had planned it out. That's what I wish. But I mean, I guess the whole point of this comic for me is to just kind of learn. And boy, this issue has been a rough one, but I think I've probably learned the most from it. I learned that, for me at least, I need some kind of plan if I'm gonna complete a comic. And I learned that, like, I don't know, like, after I did issue 4, I thought, oh, I'm good at comics now, And I forgot that the reason that issue 4, because I was proud of issue 4, I really liked it. I think it's a good comic that like anyone could read, and most anyone could get enjoyment out of, right? So, but I was like, oh, I'm good at comics now that I've made this wonderful thing that I, can point to and say, look, I made this and it's great, or it's at least good. But unfortunately I forgot that there were certain things which I did in order to get to that point, and I like stopped doing those things. It's like, oops. It's such a human thing to like go, oh, now I'm good at this thing, and then stop doing the things which made you good at the thing. It's very human. So much of this is gonna have to get erased, I think. Planning is so key. Again, for me at least. Like, because it gives you like a vision of what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because it's so hard to make a comic. Like, I'm with GGDG on this one. It's too hard. Making a comic is, in some ways, just like almost not worth it. Like, I think a lot of people sort of think of a comic as like, if I can't make a movie of it, I'll just make a comic first, because it's like a low budget, cheap version of a movie. But you gotta remember that most movies are split up between like at least 50 people, right? Same with animation. Like this, the Disney movies or whatever, there are like hundreds of employees, animators, in-betweeners who are working on those. And it's kind of not fair to like expect, even if it's, half as much work as an animated movie, which I would say in some ways it's not exactly the same amount or anything, but I would say in some ways it definitely, you could consider it at least half the work to make a comic versus making an animated movie, because you still have to do basically all of the sort of planning and the visual storytelling, and you have to have a story and all these things. But then on top of all that, you're not just cutting the staff in half, you're cutting it down to 1, 2, 3, 4 people, right? 4, I think, is basically, for a long time it was sort of industry standard, quote unquote, I guess. But it's just a rough thing to make a comic, especially if you're gonna do halfway decent color. Like, that's part of why older comics, I think, have such simple color, and oftentimes it's pretty ugly. And even then, like, that was a separate person, so just doing all of that yourself, which is possible now, and made slightly easier by there being sort of technology to help you with that. Fill Bucket is your friend and stuff. You don't have to sit there and painstakingly paint through all of these different drawings or anything like you would have had to a long time ago in animation. But it's still just a lot of work, and again, you're not cutting the staff down to 10 people or 20 people. You're cutting the staff down to you and a couple other people. So I think a lot of people sort of get into a comic thinking, oh, this is like a low budget version of the thing that I actually want to do later. But I think that they sort of need to realize, like, comics are their own thing and they have their own issues. The other thing, too, is I feel like it doesn't even help you make a better comic to think that way. Because, I don't know, like, there's some discussion about this, and I think there's something to it, but where, like, some people who make games, people are like, they don't even want to make games, they just want to make movies, right? You're just supposed to sit there and watch their game, which is not fun. Right? And in some ways it's like, it's such a waste too, because like there are specific things that games are really, really good at, and like sort of can't be done in other media, you know, because you have to, like, you have more of a participatory role. Although I'm kind of the opinion that most medias, you have to participate in it to some degree, but obviously with games it's very direct and obvious. So, like, comics, I think, again, they sort of have specific things they're good at. Like, one thing that really bothers me is when people get all sort of high and mighty about thought bubbles. It's like, no. Thought bubbles, there is no other medium where you can show a character's thoughts so easily and so succinctly and so naturally like you can in comics, you know? In books you can do the sort of italics thing, but that, like, whatever. You can also just sort of dictate, they thought this, but, you know, that's still, like, kind of a bridge. And, like, you can show characters thinking pictures, and you can show them thinking various things. You could show them thinking things sort of ambiguously if you want. Speech bubbles, like, I think a lot of people think they're corny, but there's nothing inherently wrong with them. They're just a tool like anything else. Putting it inside of a box that doesn't connect to anything, caption box, doesn't really help. You know, the tail of the thought bubble is helpful for letting you know who's thinking it, especially if there are multiple people thinking, which I have seen somebody eschew thought bubbles in a situation in which multiple people were thinking, and it just got really confusing. Oh, it bothered me so much. But, like, all they needed to do was add little tails, and you don't have to use the clouds if you don't think that they're cool enough or whatever for you. You don't have to use the clouds. That's fine. Don't be a thought bubble snob, though, because they're pretty cool. I once saw a comic where there was a thought bubble with two tails, and the character was thinking certain things, and then you sort of zoomed out and saw that another character was thinking the same things about them, right? The two characters were looking at each other, and they were having the same thought bubble about each other. Like, what a great, like, concept, and how comic specific. It was great. It was great, and it made me want to do something like it. I ended up doing a shared thought bubble, like, little sketch. It isn't really a comic. It's more of just like a, I don't know. It's like a comic strip, in that I didn't actually draw like the panel borders or anything. It's just a bunch of sketches, but I do have it up on one of my art accounts. But I just think that type of thing is so overlooked, and it's so frustrating because, again, I feel like that's one of the things that comics are, like, good at. Oh, shoot. And it's not fair to... It's like the Einstein thing, where it's like if you judge a fish by how well it climbs a tree, like, the fish will always look dumb. You know? I don't know, that quote I think is attributed to Einstein, but these days I don't know what Einstein has said and not.
But like I feel like sometimes people, you know, sort of judge comics by other standards, and it doesn't help the comic, it doesn't help them, etc. Anyway, I better get going.